And I still don't have permission, Kim.
Okay, hold on a second. Transfer host to me. Let me see if I can get it to go through.
Good morning, y'all.
I'll do the sharing and whatever.
Webinar to start, so give us a couple of minutes. Thank you all for joining. Lexi Picks, good morning, sis. Good morning, sis. Love you. Always supporting. Yeah, this is a interview that me and my son are doing for Mothers of Black Boys Mob United. And we're going to tell our mental health journey, what got us to where we are. So hold tight. We're getting ready to rock.
All right, Scott, so we're getting ready to go live right now. Beth, once I send it live, can you please
Do the shares.
do the shares and do the description? I'm not putting the description in.
Okay, yep.
All right.
All right, guys, it looks like we're live. Thank you
You're
for
live.
joining us. Good morning, good morning. As always,
Good
it's Alexander coming to you from Houston, Texas. This is our annual conversation for Moms of Black Boys United and Mental Health Awareness Month. This has really become one of the staples of my year. It is one of the things that I truly enjoy doing. I love having an opportunity to highlight our mental health warriors and those who partner with them in bringing love and light to the community. And this year is no different. We have Scott Gordon here with us and Scotty Smart. They are a dynamic father and son duo that have an amazing story. And so I'm going to shoot over to Scott and let him introduce himself. And then I want him to introduce his son. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning. Good morning. And you was giving me shade because I'm down in Atlanta, you in Houston. So we ain't going to start that. But good morning. And first of all, thank you for having me and my son and this such a relevant platform, Mothers of Black Boys. My name is Scott Gordon, and I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia. I own my own mental health practice, a safe space group practice. And one of the main things that we practice at a safe space is that we want to eradicate the stigma of mental health in our community. So we're in our third year. Practice is doing well. And one of the things that I truly champion from my practice is that 75% of my practice is African-American males. From boys, my youngest is 6 to my oldest gentleman is 66 years old. So that is such a blessing for me that I was able to do that. And one of the reasons that I'm here in the first place is because my son, Scotty, had bipolar disorder. And I know we're going to get that later, but that inspired me to read up on everything about bipolar disorder, because if he has it, then the family has it, and we had to rock together. So from that, and as you can see, he's doing an outstanding, in the community. He's just an awesome person, awesome young man, not even a man, awesome man. And that inspired me when I've read up about it to really study more. And then I enrolled in my master's program, a couple of months after that. Well, actually, it was after the passing of my mother, and we'll talk about that. But that he started my journey because I knew that if my son was suffering with a mental health illness, then I was suffering from a mental health illness. And with that, I'm going to learn everything about it. So that just inspired me to go get my master's, and here we are. Scotty?
Good morning. Thank you for having us. My name is Scotty Smart. I'm a community activist and organizer here in the city of Atlanta. I'm a frontline activist for social justice change, police brutality, but I also try to find solutions for our community. So one of the biggest things that I work with is youth development and mental health. And so with me, I've been in this space I guess I just learned how to create solutions and have my own situation with mental health when I was 18, but not actually understanding what it was at that time. So I can't say that that would begin the journey. I didn't know what happened at that time. I was aware of the manic episode that I had experienced when I was 18 years old. And so, here's some feedback. Hold on.
Yeah, I think we're having some feedback. Do we have more than one device on in someone's home?
Yeah, you gotta
turn
cut off
the volume down.
gotta cut off the volume from the IG.
Yeah.
There we go.
But yeah, just going through that experience, and then as society has grown and been more open-minded to mental health, I became more aware of what was going on. As my dad began to study and open up his practice, I began to engage more in what was going on with myself at the time. And you know, not understanding what bipolar disorder was, but I had only had one manic episode ever at that time. And so just went through the journey, and then I went through a lot of different experiences within the last year or so, dealing with a lot of grief and a lot of friends dying that triggered me to have another manic episode. So it was my first one in 18 years. And that allowed me to really understand, because I had been studying for a while what I was doing with my father with social emotional learning and working on my own emotional intelligence. And I think that that had allowed me to understand what was happening with myself, to identify what emotions I was feeling. And the journey, it actually has helped me to understand where I am currently.
Thank you so much for sharing that small piece of your story. I want to go back for a moment. Can you tell me how old you were when you had your first manic episode?
18. I was 18 years old when I had my first manic episode. Yeah.
And what did that look like for you? Were you in college, you graduated high school, kind of in the interim?
Yes, it was my first semester in college. And so it was around like Christmas break of 2005. It's a little bit of a blur, but it was, like I said, right before I came home from college for Christmas break. I remember spending my Christmas of 2005 at a mental health facility.
And I remember our prep call when we first met each other virtually, and I remember hearing the difference in the story, what your father saw and what you felt. And so first of all, 18 in 2005, like testimony to Black Don't Crack, because that's a long time ago. That's number one. But number two, I want to shoot over to Scott. Tell me what your purview was, because I just remember there being such a difference in what you saw and what he felt. What did that feel like, look like, taste like, smell like? What was that moment in time for you?
Terrifying. I had received some calls from my ex-wife, Scotty's mom, saying that he was talking out of his head, like he's up there wilding, because he had a roommate that was close to our family. So he'd call like, yo, Scotty, he's been up for days. He thinks he's a rapper and, you know, he's not getting any rest. So I said, all right. So when he came home, so that I come home from school the day that he came home, and I noticed that my mailbox was dented, like he had punched my mailbox. Okay. So when I went in the house, I saw that wasn't my son. That wasn't my son. So we immediately took him to DeKalb Medical, and you know, started a journey that was so it was just numbing, you know, being able to see your 18-year-old, your firstborn, your namesake, like, you know, in a mental hospital, and I'm tripping, I'm crying, you know. I was a school teacher at the time. I remember calling my principal and saying, hey, I don't know what to do. I was just in a panic mode. But he got stabilized. He was there like for 2 weeks. And one of the most vivid things is that one day he wouldn't shower, like he wouldn't listen to the people. He was fighting. My son's a warrior, so he's trying to fight. They had to restrain him, like he wasn't
like straight jacket type stuff.
Yeah, right, like seriously. But he knew this wasn't for him, but he couldn't get released, you know. And I remember one day I had to literally put him in the shower, like clothed and everything. And his man parts is my man. I'm looking at a grown man, not a 3-year-old child, that I had to 1-year-old that I had to change his diaper. So this is a grown man that I had to literally help bathe. And I remember stepping out the shower, wiping off the glassy mirror and saying, yo, man, if you got to do this for the rest of your life, man, this is what you're going to do, because that's your son, man. That's your son. And from there, I left that. He got out, a week later, and started our journey. And he got on some antipsychotic, antidepressant medication, and he stabilized within probably a month or so. And he just started getting back to himself. And like I said, after that, he weaned himself off the medicine. He started his journey in life. And as he said, that was the initial. And then this summer, that's when we had the scare again.
So Scotty, we keep referencing the journey. Let's talk about the journey. How much of being in the hospital do you remember?
I remember the second week. I don't really remember the first week. So I don't remember I don't remember when I first initially got there. I remember some of it's blurry, but before they started drugging me up, I remember fighting with the security guards a lot. I remember being thrown in a padded room. I remember some of those things. Like I remember Christmas Day, not being able to go nowhere, being in the hospital. So I do remember some bits and pieces of it. But I do remember not sleeping for like I said, days at a time. I just was in the panic mode. So in that, I remember, like I said, maybe the second week of being in the hospital, I think I really started to understand what was going on and understand I wasn't going nowhere until I calmed down. So until I learned, I was like, I gotta cooperate. Okay. If I don't, for a while, I was just really, I was messing with them. Like I was messing with the phones. I was just doing things to irritate the guards. I was like, y'all don't let me out. And they was like, no, we're not. So the first week, it was just them medicating me a lot. And then the second week, I believe I calmed down. I was like, all right, I just they started telling me about my pH balances and things like that to get me home. So I just wanted to go home at that point.
And I understand the concept of just wanting to go home and trying to get out of the situation that you're in. What I'm getting to is the spirit in you, because ultimately at some point you made a decision to take hold, right? You made a decision to buckle down, figure it out, get out of your present situation. But then you also made a decision to do what it was that you needed to do for you to move forward. So what was that planning process for you? You're 18 years old, you've had your first hospitalization, you have a diagnosis that you don't know anything about at that point. Your family needs to learn about it. We need to figure out what's happening. What did that roadmap look like back then?
I don't think we really had a necessary plan. I remember being very upset I couldn't go back to school. I didn't go back for my second semester of college. And at that point, I didn't have a plan. You know what I mean? I was back at home trying to find a job. Was a popular kid, running around doing parties and promotions and hanging out with what they consider the wrong crowd, which is just my friends, but doing whatever I had to do to survive that mode. So there was no plan, there was no idea of what was going on. I don't think, even at that time after the hospitalization, I wasn't receptive to what they were telling me. Like, nah, that's not me. Again, because of stigma of mental health, nah, that's not me. I'm not that, So I didn't live in a place of acceptance of that until, like I said, I got 35 years old to really understand what happened then and to be able to make a plan from it now. But at that time, there was no plan. There was just me rebelling. There was just me rebelling against society, rebelling against life, and saying, no, that's not me. That's not my issue. I'm not a victim of a bipolar disorder. I have not had a manic state. And so I wasn't really receptive to it at that time. I was just outside, like, you know what, I'm fine. I don't know what happened, and life just went on from that point. So I just went back to doing regular things. I didn't really have a plan of attack. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was a young Black man trying to find myself in society at the time, trying to find a good job, trying to figure out where I would go back to school and things like that.
And that's a typical reaction to a lot of new things in one's life, especially at 18 years old. But it also sounds like your dad had a plan. He decided that he was going to encapsulate you from a different perspective. And tell us how you got to the point where you decided his diagnosis would then be your mission, Scott. You went back to school and you changed your complete direction. Tell us about that.
Well, it wasn't immediate. It wasn't
Mhm.
immediate because I don't know, Scotty, was it a year later? I don't know, it was a year later, but it was a little later that my mother passed, right?
Okay.
My mother had an episode and
What year
she,
she had passed? 2009, I was like.
when did you graduate?
Or
Because she was
2010.
at your grad, yeah.
I
So,
graduated 05 for high school. So yeah, it was a little
yeah,
while. It was a while
yeah.
after that.
So it was not immediate, but
Mhm.
I started, the journey of just listening and finding out what mental health is, because as we know, it's a stigma in our community. Like, we ain't crazy. You ride the short bus. All of those stereotypes came to my mind. Oh, your son's crazy. You're doing all of this. So then my mother got ill. And then when my mother got ill, I started seeing and having read up on bipolar disorder, like my mother's bipolar. She was very, mood swings, because that's what bipolar is encapsulated in a nutshell. Of course, it's more serious than general mood swing. It's severe mood swings when you experience this euphoria of mania and you're all over the place and you have that grandiosity and all of that. But then it goes into deep depressions, right? And deep depression. So, I can even think of Scotty earlier, 16, 17. We just thought he was a moody teenager, right? Because
That's easy to do.
it's the same way. I want to be in my room, I'm in the dark, but then he's lively and, in himself. So, but then I saw it in my mother. I saw it in her. And then when she passed, through my grief, a good friend of mine who was the counselor at the school where I worked for. And she told me when I got back to school that it was my time. I'm like, what are you talking about? She said, because I had been working with her in the office and talking about mental health and really working with the African-American boys in the school, because I had a good rapport with them. So when they would come into the counselor's office, she would call me and I would sit down and, hey, what you doing? Don't be a knucklehead, get your education. So I had a good relationship with, the youth, the young boys, especially at the elementary school that I worked at. So that just inspired me. And she told me, this is your mission. She said, your mother's gone. So there's nothing that because all the time that you spent helping my mom, because when my mom she had some type of brain aneurysm that left her almost in a coma. They had to put her in a self-induced coma. So she was in nursing homes and we had to teach her to walk again and all of those things. So in the process, I saw that mental health component coming from her. So that was a lot on me, going back and forth, making sure I basically, I love my principal at my school. Shout out to Miss Spear, because she allowed me every day to leave work after I got my kids started. I had a substitute and I went to the nursing home to be with my mother every day. And it was taxing, but we nursed her back. She got back home. Unfortunately, I believe it was 9 months after the episode, she passed. So after the grieving period, but again, I'm a very resilient person. So when adversity hits me, I act. So my action was, okay, let's do this. So that March, I enrolled in Capella University, and the rest is history.
So tell us what you're doing now.
Well, I'm doing my love. I'm doing my passion. I opened up after I graduated from Capella. I interned. I worked for some wraparound services, and then when the pandemic hit, the company, the agency that I worked for shut down, like abruptly just shut down. Fortunately, I had just gotten my licensure. So that was my prelude. I had started my private practice, but I only had 2 clients. So and I thought I was just going to ease into it and things like that. But God had different plans for me. So October 2020, I opened up a safe space group practice. And now we're in our 3rd year. It was just a safe space then. Then the 2nd year, because I did so well, I opened it up to other clinicians to team up with me for a safe space group practice. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. I've also, like Scotty's talked about, social emotional learning. One of the things that we also offshot from this was we have partnerships with different schools in the DeKalb County school system here in Georgia, and we provide social emotional learning training. So that's how Scotty and I started getting that, because he runs that, right? He runs that as far as the education, the academics. He is everything in that. And that gave us the bridge to unite our mental health journey together. We also started last month, actually, a safe space to read is another offshoot of us, where, because we are eradicating the original statement mission of a safe space is to eradicate stigmas. So we eradicated the stigma of mental health, but we also want to eradicate the stigma of Black men don't read, right? So we started a book club, and we were very specific in the topics that we chose. The first month, this was toxic masculinity. What is that? Is that a thing? This month, we're actually, I don't have the book with me, it's in my room. This month, we talk about fatherhood, becoming dad, but we're going to talk about politics. Scotty is so versed in the local political scene in Atlanta. We got to get politically astute. We're going to talk about finances. One of the things that I'm doing is promoting finances, opening trusts, opening businesses, things that we as a people, but especially Black men, need to have this discussion.
Right.
So doing a little bit of things, doing a little something out here.
You keep bringing that Bronx into this conversation, but anyway.
It's in my DNA.
It's in your DNA. I feel you. I got
Well,
you.
if I say y'all, does that make me a little more?
Scotty, so I know you are passionate about the bridge between mental stability, mental health, understanding breaks in mental health, and the educational piece of it. I know when I talk about mental health, I always talk about it as a continuum. We know the same way we have to take care of our bodies, we have to take care of our minds, and there's an ebb and flow to mental health and just remaining stable on your respective continuum. You guys have mentioned that you've had your second manic episode and it was triggered by grief. I hear that a lot. I hear profound grief and change and emotional taxation being one of the things that truly triggers a manic episode. So many years later for you, were you able to see it? Were you able to feel it? What did that look like, and how was it different than when you were 18?
It was a lot different. With me studying about emotional intelligence a lot, I was able to identify what I was doing. So I could identify my moments of rage. I could understand my moments, but it also was compounded with a lot of different things at one time. So dealing with death of one of my best friends, compounded with lack of sleep. I would like the trauma from me. When my friend passed in June, I don't think I slept for about 2 or 3 weeks. Like I just couldn't rest my mind. And so the inability to relax. I was to the point where I would take sleeping pills and still wake back up in 20 minutes. Like I just could not relax. And so it began to spiral out, and then a mixture of anger, denial. The reality started to sink in that, somebody that I spent like every day with was gone. And then also feeling smothered. A lot of people at that time were trying to assist me, and I didn't feel like the love was genuine. And again, I'm rebellious at heart. So I began to push back on those things. And my anger, I began to lash out. And I didn't want people around me because they had been around for a while, And so it was like, y'all doing too much. I don't need that right now. I'm more of a loner. I'm more of an independent thinker. I like to be by myself. And the person who I did confide in a lot of things would just die. And I've been going through a lot of things previously, because even leading up to that, I had been to about 4 or 5 funerals earlier that year. So I was already dealing with things. And at the time, it just that the pressure of their weight was very, very heavy. And so but like I said, in this space, it was different this time around, because I knew I was able to catch it when I got back to the place of being back home. But I wasn't able to stop it in the process of it. Like in the middle of June, I was losing it, literally. So I was spiraling out of control. I was angry at the world. I was openly saying I was angry at God and why you do this to me. And me and my friend had something really special we were building. And then a lot of things around me, a lot of fake people being around me. I wasn't receptive to it. And so I knew I needed to be by myself, but everyone wanted to, oh, are you okay? You to death. And I think that we as a community don't know how to grieve or how to assist other people in the grieving process. I think we say some of those things over and over again, thinking that we're saying something new to a person, and after a while it becomes irritable. And so, just hearing, oh, how you doing? I'm like, I think I'm doing, like I just became like, I don't, like I'm doing great, you know what I mean? And it became a battle of just anger and denial and a lack of sleep that sent me into my second manic episode. So like I said, most folks don't know that after trouble passed, that I ended up going to the psych ward again. Because for I think a weekend at a time, maybe 3 or 4 days, I think. Yeah, maybe like 4 days. I was in the psych ward.
So you said a mouthful. I'm gonna go back for a minute because I got a lot of questions. So first of all, I heard you say this, that you felt people were being disingenuous, and people who were not typically around are now around. I think you're right. So many times people don't know what to say. And we have a lot of rote conversation, right? How are you? But are we really prepared to hear the answer to that? I tell people all the time, I don't ask people how they're doing if I'm not ready to receive what they're going to give me back. And so I want to talk about that a little bit, but I want to talk about it first from the therapeutic perspective. And when people are grieving, it's individual. Like many different things, when you meet a bipolar person, you've met one bipolar person. I don't care how big the disorder is. I don't care how big the diagnosis is. You've met an individual person. And that's true across the gamut. And it's true for a grieving individual. Scott, what advice do you have for people who are approaching a grieving person, approaching someone having a manic episode, approaching any of it in terms of how we attempt to help and make it about them and not us?
Great question. Great question. And I don't know if there's a rote answer. I think the first thing is when you said disingenuous, be genuine. Be genuine. Don't be fake. Like, well, I ain't talked to you in 7 months. Oh, now you want to blow up my phone every day. No, that's not going to be, right? So with everything, be as real and authentic as you possibly can, and understand if you don't have the tools to help the situation, you can harm the situation, right? So sometimes just, hey, I'm thinking about you, because there is times, I know we talk about, especially after all this gun violence, there's no need for prayers and hopes, but there is need for prayer and hope sometimes, because sometimes that's all you can do. You're limited. Like when he was going through that, me as a mental health professional are stuck, right? Because I had to make the hardest decision in my life, because giving you a little background of who he was attacking, Not only did he attack God, he attacked me, right? I'm jealous of him, and I've never supported it. And I'm like, whoa, hey, wait, because one of the things that I pride myself is being a father, is being present. I raised my sons when when their mother divorced. I was the primary custodial parent. That's what I did. So fatherhood meant everything to me. And for my fatherhood to be questioned, I was devastated. Like, yo, and I had to understand that it was the bipolar talking a lot. But some of it, because he would go in and out of lucidity. He would have in his right mind. So I had to look into myself, and I've become a better father from that, right? From that one thing, because I remember when Scotty was lucid, we talked about, and I kept the same thing I just spoke to y'all about. I spoke to him, and he said, Dad, why do you keep saying fatherhood in the past tense? We still need you. And that's one thing that I had kind of drawn back from, because all of my biological children are adults. They're grown. They're in college. They have families. I have my bonus babies here who are 16 and 17 but I was kind of on autopilot. But nah, I had to get back in the mix. I had to make it happen. And it was such a beautiful revelation, because around the same time, our family was blessed with our first grandchild. So I'm exuberant. This is my first Father's Day, and my son is in, like Christmas, we spent in the psych ward. My son, I had to literally put my son, I was in Alabama visiting my wife, child to my wife, Angel, love you, baby. And the support that she said, we were down there Father's Day with her people. But I was in constant communication with my ex-wife, like, he's losing it, he's spiraling. So I had to make the decision of placing him because I knew what needed to be as a therapist, but as a dad, to hell with that. That's my son. And I'll tell you, I said, I would have given up my license that I worked my ass off to get those degrees and that license off, if it meant for me having to betray my son. So it was the hardest thing, but I knew it was necessary. I knew he had to be stabilized. So when we go there, and he's way smarter than me, even in his manic state. I see what you're trying to do. I see what you're trying to do. I'm like, this, what I'm saying? Like, but I had to do it. And luckily, we caught him in time. It wasn't like it was a couple of months before he recovered from the first episode. It might have been a couple of weeks. He was back. And now our relationship is stronger. My relationship with my other son, Malik, is stronger, because I realized within, they still need you, bro. They still need you. The fatherhood shit don't end. It is continuous. It's evolving. It takes on different forms. But now I have the joy. Hold on. This is my joy. That's little Malik. That's our grandchild. And, it's just, life just comes full circle. So
it does. I have a Malik
Can I
also.
go back for 1 second?
What'd you say?
I want to go back because we had started the conversation about the grieving process, right? And how people aren't understanding how to help one grieve. So I wanted to talk about that, because from a perspective of one that's going through that, I think that people, when someone's grieving, we don't allow them the space to all have their own differences in what they're going through. We're all trying to find a commonality and a relatability in the space. And that may come off as dismissive to one's feelings, right? So what I'm experiencing with someone when I was grieving, and someone would say, "Oh, I've been through a situation like that." I'm like, "No, your situation wasn't, your grandma dying is not like my best friend dying. Like, that's not the same thing." You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not the same thing. And it would always, that was one of my triggers. It was like, I got to the point where I didn't want to hear that shit, to be honest. Like, I didn't want to hear that I didn't want you to compare what you did, because then I would be like, well, did you do this with your mama? Did you did you go to the club? Did you have a business license? Did you do this? Like, did you spend every day with this person? Did you like the stock market? And so I would say that to the people that are trying to help others grieve, it's not something to say. It's not something that you can say. It's just being there and trying to find normalcy. The hardest part about grieving, especially when you with someone every day, is trying to understand what's your new normal. You know what I mean? Like, every day I would get off work, I would call this person. Every day I would wake up in the morning, I would call this person. So now that routine is broken, what do I do it myself? You know what I mean? And so trying to go through that journey of finding what normal looked like for a while and understanding that I couldn't fill that void. I couldn't smoke that void away. I couldn't drink that void away. I couldn't be with these women as I wanted. All of that still left that void there of missing someone that I dealt with every single day, compounded with a lot of life happening and having to deal with other deaths as well on top of that, right? And so I think that the biggest thing is just to be there for people if you feel like you are a genuine person, but you don't have to try to create a solution, because there is no solution. There is no solution. It's just time and healing and understanding. And for the people that are going through the grieving process, I tell them just to understand that level of pain. Avoidance isn't going to work at all. You know, it's triggering. Grief is a never-ending process. There's things, it's 11 months now, and still cry daily, still get triggered daily. You know what I mean? And so I think that we have to be more aware as a community of how others feel and not try to put, because what people do all the time is try to put themselves in that situation and tell their story to what happened. I'm like, I don't give a damn. I do not care about your situation right now. It's not important to me. And then also understanding it puts a lot of life into perspective. You start to hear a lot of complaints about a lot of nothing. A lot of people talk about things with no purpose, no intentionality, just a complaint in life. And so we started to put everything on a scale to say those things aren't as important. It's not life or death. I got to the point where if it wasn't life or death, I just didn't want to hear it. And so I think the way people interacted with me, especially with my brother being a celebrity at the time, it threw a lot of people into my space and I'm very a private person. So I'm like, can y'all just leave me the hell alone? I'm trying to be, community builder, trying to be inviting, but it was too much for me. I was overwhelmed. And so I didn't know how to express those things. And again, my thing is, if you back me into a corner, I'm going to come out fighting. I'm not going to lose. I'm going to come out, and it's going to be me or you, and it got to be you. That's just how my own mind works. And so I became very aggressive. And I went through a phase, like I said, with my dad, while I was clearing the room. Okay, since everyone wants to be here now, let's talk about why I don't like your black ass. And why I don't like let's have these real conversations. Since y'all want to be in the space of who was missing and how we talk to each other, let me show you the transparency that I have with this individual that knew everything about me, that I talked to every single day, that who I was my outlet. And since you want to be those things, then there has to be a moment of clarity between me and you for us to move forward. So therefore, I did go on an attack on my dad. I did go on an attack on my cousins. You know what I'm saying? I did go on an attack on a lot of people around me to say, look, I mean, we cool, but if we're going to grow from here on out, we have to resolve some of these things. And some of them, may have been previous thoughts that I was expressing in my manic state of mind. Right. And not all, something I had to apologize to a lot of people when I got back in the clear. They was like, damn, bro, you told me I was a demon in your life. And I was like, it'd be like that sometimes.
Well, what happened was
there was some truth in there, but it might have been exaggerated truth. And so I just say that for people that are like grieving to express their emotions, but for the people that are around them, allow people to take the time that it is for them. There's nothing you can say, there's nothing you can do. It's just be there. It's just show up and try to figure out what a sense of normalcy looks like in that space.
I want to piggyback on that, because give a shout out to one of the greatest supervisors, Ayana Gillum, who was my supervisor at the time. And she told me, because I used to feel like if I sat in session with a client and I wasn't doing anything, that I wasn't working, right? So just now, me allowing Scotty to tell that story is growth for me because but I had to learn because what you have to learn as a therapist and even in grief is you have to learn to sit with it, right? You have to learn to be with people to sit with it, sit in the grief and the trauma with them. And it's a very uncomfortable spot, but it's necessary to do that. We just experienced a loss of epic proportions. One of Scotty's best friends, again, his son drowned being a hero, right? And I have volunteered to the mom and dad some pro bono work. So in the discussion with them yesterday about how I'm going to show up for because they have a younger son that they want me to come and work with. So I've said, of course, I'm gonna come and do some pro bono work, but they just told me how my son helped them so much because he was just there sitting with them, right? And allowing them, as he said, that safe space, yes, plug intended, that safe space for you just to say anything, for you to grieve your natural, because we know there are 5 steps to grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and then acceptance. And you have to vacillate through all of those things, right? You have to value through all of the steps, and you can't speed up the process. You can't speed up the process.
And it's not linear.
It's not, and as he says, I know when I can check on, I can check on my son's mental by his post. If I see him posting his friend a lot, I check on, yo, you good? You good? Because I know he's reminiscing. I know that. So I just check on his mental. He doesn't, this is the first time I've ever admitted to that, but I look at his timeline. All right, yeah, he posting trouble hard. All right, let me check on him. You good? Yeah, Pop, And the thing about him is that he has a purpose in life. And it's a big topic, but understanding your purpose. As a parent, it was hard. Me and his mother used to get on it because like, yo, what the hell? What are you doing? You want to be this, you want to be that, you're an advocate, you're things like that, get a job. But Scotty rebelled against that because he knew his purpose early in life. He knew this what he was going to be, that he's destined to be. And now he's walking his purpose. And when you have your purpose in life, you become more resilient. You don't allow fear to take over you because you are in charge, because you know why you get up every day to do what you do. He's walking in his purpose and I walk in my purpose every day. And it's just beautiful. It's beautiful.
I want to touch on a couple of things. I'm going to continue the conversation on purpose for the time being, but we're going to go back to something that Scotty said about being alone. As Black men, I'm teasing you about being from the Bronx, I'm from Harlem, but coming from the environment that we've come from, purpose is so often defined by our 4-block radius, right? What we see, what we're told, what we hear. You wake up to the sirens some nights, you go to bed to the sirens. And Moms of Black Boys United, we pride ourselves on changing perception, on helping families manage self-care, mental health, and be whole people, allowing our sons to be whole people. You said you walk in your purpose every day, and you gave provision for Scotty to do the same. Tell me what that work looked like, because military, basketball, football, just don't go to jail. Just get a GD, just get a high school diploma. Like, that's the messaging. And we're working really hard at pivoting from that ideal and that idea that we are limited by what this universe has told our Black men all the time, that they are and what they are not. What was your changing point? And then how did you do the work to translate that to your son?
It's funny, and I was smiling because Scotty and I, we were invited by a good brother, Jason, Mr. 2 Weeks Out on Instagram, He does a mental health symposium every year. So he owns one of the biggest gyms, a loft in Atlanta, and he invited me, and also I'm gonna bring my sidekick there to speak about mental health. And the topic that I talked about is self-love, and we talk about that, being able to sit with yourself, being able to, I talk about 4 things that are crucial to, building that relationship, that self-love with yourself. Is the mirror moment, looking at yourself. Then it's being kind to yourself, practicing self-care, and then quality alone time, sitting with yourself. Scotty inspired me because he's, I think he got on a little TLC thing, because waterfalls are his thing. Don't go chasing waterfall, but that's his piece. Even in his manic state, that's where he wanted to go. I need to go to a waterfall. I need to be in nature to be, rejuvenated. So there was over 75 to 100 brothers at this, and you can check it out. We have excerpts on at H. Scott Gordon on Instagram. Shout out. That is a shameless plug, but we'll take it.
You from the Bronx? I expect it. It's all good.
What led me to this is just my commitment to my family first and foremost, my commitment to God. Well, excuse me, family, y'all second. My commitment to God first and foremost, my commitment to my family, and my commitment to my work, right? So when I realized this is what I'm here for, this is what you're good at. Like, you're good at, I remember a good brother, shout out to my man Key, when I was teaching, and I was a good teacher. I was a very good teacher, but he's like, nah, bro, that ain't you, because I did a presentation on mental health during a faculty meeting. And he came to me and said, that right there, that's who you are. That's what you walk in, right? And he almost like kind of pushed me out of education. I'm like, I'm not horrible, but he said, nah, but that's not your purpose. My wife said, yep, that's you. You are that. You're a helper. You're a natural helper. So my process was just being true to myself, being the man that I am for my children, right? Being the man I am for my students when I was teaching, being the man I am for my clients every day. When I found, and I think just finding and discovering this is my purpose. So when I walk in my purpose, then it becomes easy. It becomes easy. Every day becomes easy. I have a large caseload. I see on average between 35 to 45 clients per week. I work Monday through Saturday, right? But and it's not like I don't get tired, but it's like I'm rejuvenated. I'm refreshed when my 13-year-old says, hey, I got an A and I've been struggling, but now some of the techniques that you taught me has allowed me to, control my mind and all of that. That refreshes me. That gives me the inspiration that, there we go. We're doing good work. Well done, my good and faithful servant. Let's go. So how it transferred to Scotty saw me and I saw him. And then when I introduced him to social emotional learning, because it was basically, I needed someone. As a matter of fact, we were hired by a good friend of mine, Rita Williams, who owns a company, Fine Tune. Shout out to Fine Tune, wonderful sister. And she hired, when she hired me for the social emotional learning director for her company, I brought my whole crew, right? And part of my crew was my son. I'm going to bring my son. And that started his journey. And then, we amicably broke off from Fine Tune, and then we just excelled and did our own thing. So, life comes full circle.
Amen.
Um,
You said that
I'm gonna piggyback on that.
Sure.
Because for me, purpose was different. I realized purpose through death. What I mean by that is, like, again, coming from the communities that we grow up in, you see a lot of death at a young age. And so I lost a lot of friends along the journey. And for me, around like 2015, 2016, I started thinking about, what if I was to die now, what does my forever look like? what did I instill on this earth? What type of impact do I have? And so then that began me being more purpose and intentional about my days, understanding that the reality of it is somebody gonna die today. And I hope, swear to God, I hope it's not someone we know and things like that, but it's the reality of life that someone dies every day. And in that moment, when it's all said and done, what are you remembered for? And so for me, I believe, for one, I always love the relationship I have with my father because it's challenging, right? And I'm the type of person that's like, if you challenge me, I can literally do whatever I want to if I feel challenged. Like, okay, I'm gonna get this shit done. And so I remember around his 50th birthday, I was thinking to myself at that time, like, man, he used to have an all-boys summer camp called him Dogo Kondo. And me, I was always asking community, like, what do we do? Where are the next leaders? What are we gonna do? And things like that. And I was asking him, I was like, Pop, we need more stuff like you used to do when I was a little kid or whatever. And he told me, he was like, man, I'm getting old. Why don't you create your own? And I was like, oh, okay, let me figure out what that looks like. You know what I mean? And so then I started writing a lot more. And I wrote something called What's Cool at the time. And What's Cool was about me putting myself under a microscope to understand that I had been chasing this facade of what's cool in society, but it led me to nothing. So like I'm 25 years old, I'm putting myself under a microscope like, damn, I ain't got shit. I don't have nothing, but I'm popular. I'm popping in the club. You know what I'm saying? I don't have nothing to hold on to at the time. And so I began to try to figure out my own space and my own purpose. And I created, and from What's Cool, at the end of What's Cool, I wrote, we have to do a surgery on our brains and what we praise. We need to highlight education. We need to instill intelligence into our community, right? And then from that, I began my own brand as the Smart Foundation. And my whole purpose was I want to be the staple of positivity and education within my community, whatever that looks like. And so the Smart Foundation, so I was like, I'm a brand smart everywhere. And I came up with the acronym, Some Men Are Really Trying. And I felt like, hey, I could support and I can do anything for anyone that was trying to help me work or help themselves. I would show up and highlight their work efforts. And so that began, and then I began to show up, you know, as we watched the world happen and Mike Brown and Trayvon Martin. I was already intrigued, but I was like, okay, I gotta do something. Like I felt like, okay, what if I did something? Like I didn't want to be a person that was just speaking about it and said, oh yeah, you know, just talking about it out loud, but I wanted to really get involved. So I started showing up in community. I started showing up to rally. I started showing up to protest. And 95% of the battle was just being in the room and then being able to see what was happening in the room, being able to see our disconnects as a community. And a lot of it with the people who wanted to help and who they were trying to help was the lack of communication, the lack of emotional intelligence to be able to communicate to help one another. So then I could see that and then understand, like, yes. And then I had a mentor, shout out to Attorney Griggs and Marcus Coleman, who saw my passion for a community, saw my passion for wanting to help, and was like, hey, let me give you some direction. So then they started taking me to city council meetings and county commissioner meetings. And that's how I became involved with political education to understand, like, dang, we don't really know what the hell we talking about when it comes to politics. It ain't got nothing to do with the president. A lot of it has nothing to do with the president. That's all we know to show up and vote for, right? So as I studied that, I became more engaged in that, but also seeing how hand in hand that went with emotional intelligence and be able to relate your message. Because I understood that I couldn't force my message to want to put on other people. I had to allow it to come to me. I'm not the person that goes around trying to tell you about what you should do and things like that. I allow it to come to me. And so in an emotional intelligence space, I became more socially aware of the people around me. And at the time, again, this is 2016, 2017, it's not popular right now. It became popular after 2020, but this time it's not popular. Colin Kaepernick is taking a knee. He ain't, and I'm like, we ain't watching the NFL, and everybody looking at me like, we watching football, bro. We watching football, like, we not. I'm like, y'all not willing to sacrifice nothing. Like, I'm just mad, right? Like, I care so much about community, and I care so much about us as a people. And I'm like, this is our moment. This is a historical time, and no one's understanding my passion. And so therefore, that's when my disconnect from people began, when I had to when I understood that I was doing something right within my purpose and my intentionality, but nobody else agreed. And I was like, so what? I know that I'm doing something right. I believe in my heart, this is correct. This is what we need as a community. And I really don't care who don't like it. I don't care. I don't need your acceptance. I don't need your validation. I know this is between me and God, and this is my purpose. And so I didn't expect anyone to show up. I would just put things up and post about what I was doing. But I never expected my friends to show up because they just didn't understand at that point in time what I was doing. And so the community formed around me of people who were just showing up, and those became a closer network of my friends and within our purpose. And so it took those trials and tribulations to say, I really don't care who you are. I really don't care what you're doing. You can't stop what I'm doing. And I was, even like I said, what my dad said, when I was going through that process, I used to sell cars. And I was just like, I mean, I'm making good money, but this ain't really what I want to be doing, right? And so I lost that job. I just was like, no, I'm not going to work for nothing else. It's not in my purpose. I can sell anything. You know, I don't work for Uber's. I don't work for DirecTV. And I sold cars. And I went through a 2 or 3 year period of unemployment, having to move back in with my mom and things like having to downscale and downsize my entire life. Because I was stubborn in my purpose and my resilience to say, I want to do something that's masterful. If I'm going to commit to a job, like even with my dad, when he was working for that lady, I was like, Pop, I don't know about this. I don't know about working for this. Like we could probably branch out. Like I'm an entrepreneur at heart. So it's like, I don't really deal with like people unless it's like purposeful. So I'm like, we can do it on our own. Let's just do it. And so that took place. And then we got to the point where we really just grew into a space of being the people in the community that could create solutions. And so my purpose was to create solutions through the SMART Foundation to highlight productivity, to feed the homeless once a month, to send kids to prom once a month, to pass out school uniforms, to do anything that was solution-based thinking to where we could fix problems for our community. And then again, it tied back into the opportunity with social emotional learning to say, hey, these grown people don't have emotional intelligence. They don't know how to interact with themselves. They can't have a conversation. They can't have a disagreement with composure. And that's one thing I learned is that most people cannot have a disagreement or tell you how they feel with keeping themselves composed. So a lot of times people lose it in their anger and their frustration. And so I started to study those things. And that, along with political education, became me walking in my purpose with youth development, because I feel like, hey, these are tools that could be needed. That's long-term tools that are longevity to help us as a community and me as a person as well.
Amen. Yes, I love that. Stubborn in your purpose. I love that. We all need to be stubborn in our purpose. And disagreement with composure, it is not a skill that so many of us are not taught that skill, in just understanding that everything is not catastrophic. That's what I tell my people. Everything is not catastrophic. Everything does not have to be a dismantling of a relationship. And just because you throw the bathwater away, you don't have to throw the baby away too. So, you know, I love hearing that. And I love hearing how all of that has evolved for you. You said something a little while ago. You said there's healing in the feeling. But Black men ain't taught how to feel. Come on now, Scotty.
Right, definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
We're talking about things that so many people feel like are innate in us, and they're not, right? It's work. Relationships of any form are work. So tell me how you got to a place that as a young Black man growing up, you felt allowed to actually feel.
I think that I was always instilled with like a self-confidence in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so me feeling never required validation from other people. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people struggle with, is that I've always been able to live in my truth. And so within living in my truth, I can honestly say what I'm feeling at a time. Now, I wasn't always able to communicate that. And that's why I've always been quiet at times, because I know that I have the ability to push the envelope as well. I know that if I speak, I'm going to say something that's going to ruffle your feathers. And so I had to learn how to gauge those conversations But I had to also learn how to be more vocal and express what I was feeling because I would just shut down. That's a typical thing as a man. And through our conversations with my father, within his purpose, with him doing his work, and he started to label it as raising me as a toxic masculine. I didn't agree with that for a while, but I had the ability to see what he was talking about. And through conversations with him, I was able to say, okay, maybe that is what it is. And I think that the biggest thing is being able to identify what you're feeling and give it a label or understand what you're going through and being able to say and be honest with yourself and be able to say, yes, I'm feeling a level of rage. Yes, I'm feeling a level of anger or disappointment. I'm overwhelmed. And to understand what that looks like for yourself and be able to disconnect when it's time for you and not worry about the responsibility of having to take care of other people. And I think that's the thing about Black men that happens to slow us down at times is that we take on the burden of others and their responsibility and what they think of us. And, oh, you weak, oh, you crying, why you going through that? And, at times when you ask, oh, how you doing? I would tell you, yes, I'm broken right now. And I was okay with that. You see what I'm saying? And other people would be stunned. They didn't know how to respond. Like, no, I'm broken. Like I don't have it right now. Like I literally shut down for a couple of months. Like even right now, going through what I was going through, I felt to a place where I shut down all of my entrepreneur endeavors about a month. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't have it. I didn't want to have it. I was drained emotionally. I couldn't be there for other people. And I had to be okay with that, especially when I put on this superhero hat of community builder and community organizer that I can handle everything. I had to say, hey, I can't take on your problems right now. I have to worry about my own feelings and being honest and transparent with myself. And honestly, I have a moniker where I tell people all the time, adults will get over that shit. They will get over it, whatever it is. Like if they don't like it, they'll get over it. And you have to be willing to sometimes piss people off and not be a people pleaser, but be a self pleaser of what you're going through and be able to say, hey, yeah, I don't want to show up at times. And so I think being honest and true with yourself and taking the time to understand what you need and taking the time to really gather your thoughts and think things through to where you understand that I have to put what I need for myself first right now. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. I think especially in the social media era, we identify with what people like and we're trying to fit in so much. And for me, I just never been like that. Like I never cared what people were doing. Like I've been standing on my own and whatever I believed in all the time. And so that allowed me to really walk in this light. But I think that you have to be able to know yourself, to spend time with yourself. I was reading something that they said that like people are losing their minds because they're lonely. And I'm like, no, you're afraid of being alone. That's totally different. It's because some people need that love from other people because they haven't found that within themselves, how strong they can really be. And so they need that. And I also learned that through death, that I was codependent on some of my friends as well. And so then I had to learn how to spend time with myself. I had to learn, okay, I can't get up and I had to go sit down and eat by myself the other day. Like I never used to do that. You know what I'm saying? I used to, hey, school, hey, trouble, where you at? Let's meet me at, let's go eat. And so I had to learn that I was codependent on him to a certain degree, just in regular life. And so I had to learn how to spend time with myself again at 35, 36 years old. How do I build and what do I want? And because where our trajectory was going wasn't a part of God's plan. And unfortunately, it was hard to accept that because we were building so many things. And so one thing, my good friend, Shivy, who his son, considered like my nephew, Bryce, when he passed, I think that I told him like I needed a friend that I could actually grieve with because sometimes the people I grew up in the hood, they don't know how to grieve. They want to go hurt people and things like that. And one thing, the greatest piece of advice he gave me, well, my mom gave me similar advice, but he gave me a piece of advice and he said that when you're going through your things, you can't continue to ask God why, because you'll never get that answer. But in those moments, ask God, what am I to do with this? And what is my purpose? And how would you like for me to move forward with this? And from that moment, which I said this was only a month ago when his son passed, I've been able to put that into my mindset. Okay, so what am I doing with this? How do I create legacy? And how do I move with purpose? How do I be intentional so that my mindset says, whenever I do go, I want to build something that lasts 50 years beyond my death date. That's how I think, right? Like in terms of historical times. And so with that, I had to understand what I wanted to have impact on. So yes, mental health, yes, youth development, yes, political education, things that are needs for our community to thrive. And so I implemented myself into those positions and wanted to learn and become a scholar in those places.
All right. Thank you for sharing that. That is so, it's just, there's profundity in all of what you just said. What I took from that was, I kept thinking, congratulations in understanding that your self-focus wasn't your failure. It is hard to put something that you've worked so hard for down. And it's even harder not to view that as a failure. So your understanding that putting it down for the moment was the basis of it catapulting to the prosperity that is already aligned for you, your father, and the organizations that you're working with. You said passion, and so many times, especially as Black young men, boys, grown men, even as Black women, your passion translates to anger. Anxiety translates to anger. All people see when they see us, and we talking and our hands is flying, and you know, we are so enthralled, and our voices go up, is our passion translates as anger to people. And we know that even in our communities, as we stand up and stand out for all of the injustices that we are fighting against, so many of us have visited funeral homes and you know, countless of hashtags. Scott, when you're talking to your clients, when you're talking to your community, when you're talking to those who you have been charged with, tell me how you help them translate their passion to just passion and express themselves such that they can be heard.
Excellent question. I'm looking at, with my younger clients, a documentary that's on Peacock called Black Boys.
Okay.
And it's profound. But what they talk about is that double-edged sword of aggression that we have as Black men, right? Because we're commodities, right? The Black body is the commodity, you know. We are the money maker at football, basketball, all of those things. So we're applauded for our aggression to there, and then we're Mike Brown. We're shot 20 times because of, or we are George Floyd, right? Because of that same aggression. So we have to understand. But Scotty talked about a lot of the things. So social emotional learning is more geared to the youth. Emotional intelligence social emotional learning leads to emotional intelligence. And that's one of the things that I test in my clients after a certain amount of time, that they have that. Do they have the self-awareness, self-regulation, internal motivation, empathy, and social skills? So understanding and controlling your emotions allows you not to be that microaggressions. You know, I until I was in my PhD program, I didn't know what a microaggression was. You know, now I'm like, okay, yeah. Oh, you smart. Oh, you smart for a Black guy. What? No, fuck, I'm smart. Period. Understand this. You know, so I think the key is to have that emotional quotient, that emotional intelligence, to understand, not just to be, because first of all, we're not aware of our emotions, right? So that's the first step, to be aware and to handle and to be able to sit with them and understand that they are not male and female emotions, they're just human emotions, right? It's okay to be fearful. We need to be fearful because it's not even an emotion, it's an instinct. It's hardwired into our amygdala, right? So you have to be fearful, but it's okay to be lonely. But those things were not permitted to us. So I, in my practice, give my men, most of all my clients, the permission to feel. But when you feel, understand, just like you can't when you're mad, because that's the only acceptable emotion that Black boys are given. You can be the mad little Black boy, right? You can be that, but you can't be, because anything else, you can't be the scared or the lonely or the shy or any of that, because then you're considered weak. That's not weakness. So first and foremost, I give my clients permission to feel, but I also teach them how to feel, how to regulate that, because after self-awareness becomes self-regulation, right? We got to be able to regulate these emotions, because we are passionate people as a race. That's what we do. We talk with our hands. We that's who we are, right? So not, but still being authentic and learning how to control the room, because when you control yourself, you control the room. So that's how I teach my client, is to be emotionally intelligent. Then you can have the social skills. Then you can learn how to have empathy and all of those things. But it takes a basis of knowing who you are. And this right here, self-love, loving yourself. I quoted Dr. Sebi at the end of my speech last week to the men to talk about self-love and how important. And Dr. Sebi said that self-love is the greatest love of all, because when you love yourself, you can love everyone and everything. He said it's easy. It becomes natural. But a lot of times I read a study about 60% of violent crimes are African-American men, and we only comprise 14% of the population. But let's look at why. And then 90% of that 60% is Black on Black crime. So my hypothesis is the reason that we can kill, maim, and destroy each other is because we don't love ourselves. Because that right there, that face right there, that's my face, right? And a lot of times while he was speaking, I'm not only listening, I'm the proud papa, because that's my son. That's my seed. So one of the things that I've instilled in Hallie, Kelly, Scotty, Malik, Caitlin, Madison, Megan, and now my grandson, little Malik, love yourself, be proud of yourself. My son always knew he was great, because we speak life into our children, not death, but life. We break stereotypes that Black fathers are not present. We are here and we do care. I'm sorry. That's my passion.
Amen. No, don't even, I don't need you to apologize. Go ahead, Scotty.
From understanding emotional intelligence at this point, right? I think that passion is tricky, because passion can sometimes be an excuse. It's because we have crimes of passion. You know what I mean? And so therefore, passion can be also uncontrollable. Passion can lead to rage and anger. And so I think that you can be, again, you have to figure out the lines of passion, but being compassionate and be able to keep your composure within those things. So I can be passionate about something, but I don't have to be as aggressive at the same time. And I think that we become aggressive about it when we feel unheard or you're not listening. You know what I mean? And so I think passion is very tricky. It's a very slippery slope that can teeter-totter on productivity or not, because a lot of people can use the excuse to say, oh, I'm passionate about something. Yeah, you're passionate about a lot of things. But if you don't have the ability to control your emotions with passion, it can lead to you doing something. One thing I say, it looks that you have reactionary and I can't think of the thing right now. Reactionary and rational thoughts. A lot of times passion is reactionary. You know, you're not being rational and thinking things through. And so therefore, I think you have to be able to tap into your rational. I was reading that a lot of times people don't have that inner thought process. They just go. They're just in survival. Their instincts are all they rely on, and they live off of those things. And so you can be very passionate, but it also can lead to you crashing out in a sense. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that you have to be able to control your passion and project it into a space of productivity.
Amen. So we are down to about 10 minutes and I have 2 more questions and I'm already calling a part 2. So y'all just be ready for my next invitation, okay? I'm already calling a part 2. But I want to talk about the evolution of parenting. And in that evolution of parenting, and Scott, this is more for you, the allowance of parental forgiveness. Because like you, I have children who run the gamut. My oldest is 29 and my youngest is almost 17.
You're
And
29 though.
that was cute. That was real Bronx. And my oldest daughter is diagnosed bipolar as well. She openly talks about that. So my journey is not very different than you guys is in just the thought process and managing those kinds of things. But I know that with my 29-year-old, it was different than my 24-year-old, and it was different with my 22-year-old, and it is now different with my almost 17-year-old. And there was an evolution of learning and parenting and shedding the just whip his ass and shedding the, you got to handle it this way. And why are you letting this happen? And then self-forgiveness for not always getting it right. So when you're talking to the parents, Scott, both for your personal journey, but for our journey as parents, what advice do you have as we manage the evolution and the forgiveness?
Grace, give yourself grace because there's no manual. And usually there's not even an example for you to be a mother or father because they're not present in the household. Or if they are, they're working 2 or 3 jobs to survive because unfortunately, people of color very seldom live. We survive. We're in survival mode all the time. So as we live, also humble ourselves. I've humbled myself that I don't know it all. That I learned as much from my son. I told him the other day, politics, I don't know a damn thing. Well, I'm learning more, but I learned from him. I learned from my daughters. I learned from my bonus. I learned from everyone. So being open and don't think that you're the subject matter expert of everything, even this parenting thing. And when you get it wrong, like I used to be a womanizer and I showed my children, my sons particularly, because I'd be just doing my thing. I had to go back when I finally said that's not what the need to be. And I got married and I settled down. I apologized to my sons. I humble myself. This is not what I want you to be. I want you to be better than me. Wanting someone to be better than you and learning from your mistakes. I always quote, when we know better, we do better. So I can't beat myself up. We have to give ourselves grace and forgiveness, right? I didn't have a manual. My sons grew up driving. We know every verse to the blueprint, like every verse to the blueprint. They were little boys. That's what I played in the car. My daughters, baby Einstein, baby Bach. That's what it is. My grandson, baby So I evolved and became a better parent because I didn't know my son. Those is my guys, you know what I'm saying? We sit out there, I'm the parent that pulled up to the school in the BMW, music blasted. Now, as an educator, when I was an educator, I'm like, that's so ignorant. That's so, but I couldn't judge because I was the same thing. But then I had to evolve and get better and get calmer. And one of the things that I think that when you talk about Scotty's recovery and things like that is that I was always the parent that you can talk to me about anything. Now, don't question me in the heat of battle. They knew that. Like when we ended, it's like, but they can come back to me in hindsight after we've calmed down and said, Dad, can you explain why this happened? And I can have those open, honest discussions and become vulnerable. The big catchword that we are talking about that we all is vulnerability. We are scared to death as men, especially to be vulnerable because vulnerability equates to weakness, but it's not. We are here through a safe space, group practice, a safe space to read, Smart Foundation, Change Creators. All of these ventures are saying it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to feel. It does not emasculate you. Matter of fact, it makes you a better man because you're going to be present to your wife. You're going to be present to your family. You're going to be present to your community. And when you're present and in the now, that's when you affect change.
Amen. Amen.
If I had a mic, I'd drop it right now.
Ooh, so my last question before we end this and start preparing for part 2 is fear. I want to go back to one of the first things we started this conversation about. Scotty, you said nobody would leave you alone, and all I heard was fear. You said people kept checking on you, and all I heard was fear. That's what I heard, because as a mother, I know when any one of my children are spiraling, I'm afraid. I'm afraid to leave that person alone. I'm afraid not to have my daughter pick up the phone. I'm afraid. And I heard you saying all you wanted was space. And your father saying, I couldn't give him that space. So I want to end this on how we can navigate that. I want to be the parent to my children that they need me to be, but I want to feel safe to step away.
All right, I'll let Scotty close it out, but I teach on this a lot. Fear is hardwired. It's not going anywhere. It's our lizard brain, our amygdala, it's there. What we have to do is that we have to understand what's the difference between fear and just being in a dangerous situation, because your amygdala is going to be alerted when we're out of our comfort zone, right? So the same fear, if you're out there trying to do a drug deal in the bluff, is the same feeling that your brain is going to alert you if you have to do a TED talk or a speech or something like this, right? What you have to understand that you got, but a fear is an opportunity. It's like an alarm. Okay, there's an opportunity for growth, because we cannot grow as people in comfort. We have to be uncomfortable to grow. So we master fear by dancing with fear. Okay, when it's not dangerous. I don't want y'all to go to the bluff like, oh, I'm fearful. Yeah, I'm out here. No, bro, you're gonna get your ass shot. Understand that. That's not where you're supposed to be. But if you're in an opportunity, like, believe it or not, and y'all know y'all won't, he doesn't like public speaking. But
neither do I. I believe it.
But he faced the fear, right? Mm-hmm. He's faced his fear because he knew it wasn't dangerous. Fucking up in public speaking ain't gonna kill you. You might get embarrassed, but you keep going. So he was able to grow because you got to face your fear, because 95% of the things we fear never happen. Never happen. And it's funny because when we were doing the talk, all these men were talking about, I'm anxious, I'm feeling anxiety. Bro, do you know what anxious is? It's just the new buzzword for fear. That you're scared. But it's easy to say I'm anxious. You know, that's more acceptable. But it's okay to be scared. I was scared to death when my son went through that thing. But again, resilience and knowing my purpose, that said, okay, we got a problem. What we gonna do about it? Instead of cowering and saying, oh, I don't know what to do. That's resilience. So that's how you defeat fear. You can't kill fear, but you got to learn to navigate it. You got to put fear in the back seat. It can't run you, but you got to break it out when it's needed.
Okay. I'm gonna let you close out, Scotty. The floor is yours. I want to hear websites. Tell me how people can get in contact with you in the Atlanta area. So start out with fear and then end with letting us know how we can reach you.
So we'll ask the question again about fear one more time, because he said a lot, so I just wanted to a lot of good stuff. I was in there.
I think that was a little bit of shade, Scott. I don't know, but
you can be wrong with it at times. That's fine.
Isn't that the pot calling the kettle?
I want, from your perspective, I know that you felt smothered by the check-ins at certain points, and I said, as parents, as people who care about our young people and the offspring of us, that those check-ins equate to fear in a lot of instances. How do you help how do young people help parents mitigate that fear? What can you give us that will allow us to give you that space so that we're not sitting in that torture of not knowing?
I think it's the relationship with the parent though, right? And understanding the parent. Like, for instance, the differences in my parents, right? Like my mom is going to call me every single day. If I don't answer the phone, I know she's going to become fearful of something's wrong. She's going to go into, I know I got to at least answer the phone or text her back and say, hey, I'm okay, for her to feel like everything is all right. And understanding that is who that is as a parent. As far as my dad, I don't have to hear from him every day. And it's okay. It is not like, well, what the hell going on with my dad? Or something's wrong when I don't hear from him. So I think it's understanding from both perspectives of the parent and the child. And also I think that being able to communicate what you're feeling, right? Because when I went through the situation again with my friend's son dying in April, my mom called me right in the moment of me being hysterical, because I had just got the phone call that his son died, and I had just saw his son like before he left for spring break. And so I'm just in her space of fear. What can I do? And she was going, and I was like, no, I'm good. You know, I'm okay. I don't need to drive to your house. I just need to be here. I just need to sit. I'm fine. I just need to take some time to process it. And so I think it's also knowing yourself and being able to communicate what you need for yourself. Hey, I feel like this, and this is what I need. And so for me, the fear is, dealing with fear is understanding that most of the time I don't get too uncomfortable. I'm very comfortable with myself. I'm very good with being who I am and knowing what I am. And so I think that the fear is the unknown. The fear is what you don't know and what you don't trust. And so I said to that as parents, you have to be able to instill certain skills in your children that allow them to have critical thinking skills, and for them to be able to express themselves and think things through in a manner in which they can engage and make correct decisions. The biggest thing I see in parenting or in just in communication is the lack of understanding of who they're talking to, understanding your audience, and making it too much about what you feel. Now you're projecting your fears on me, and I'm not really scared. So now you're projecting your fear on me, and I'm not afraid at all. I'm like, I'm fine. I'm good. I can handle whatever God has put in my path. I know that He doesn't give me more than I can handle. Now, I might not agree with it. I'm like, man, this is a whole lot to handle. This is a lot. But again, if you have that relationship with God and you understand your purpose and you understand your walk through life, then you have the ability to overcome your fears. Like he said, one of my fears has always been public speaking. And I used to have like damn near anxiety attacks. And I used to have to, the first time I spoke in public, I had to go pee like 5 times. Like my heart just coming out my chest. But then now, as I prepare myself more, as I say, hey, if this is my purpose, if this is what you want out of my life and my relationship with God, to say, hey, maybe I didn't think this was my path, and maybe, and I relate it to working out. When you say that uncomfortability, that growth, because when you work out, you go through those sore days. You know what I mean? You go through that soreness, and that soreness is what shows you you're getting stronger. And so those uncomfortable moments and your fear that you have to overcome, if you do it repetitiously and you repeatedly, and you continue to grow through the fear, now I feel confident that I can speak in public in different situations. I know I can be articulate. I know I can be a voice of reasoning for my community. And so I think it's about the relationship with the parent and understand and instill the ability to make critical decisions as a child for themselves, that you trust their decision making. Now, if you don't trust them to make the right decision, then y'all still have a lot of room for growth. Because case in point, when that situation happened, my mom was like, oh, I'm about to come over there. I'm like, I'm not driving to you. You stay 45 minutes away. I don't need you here. I just need to process what just happened, because I literally just saw the 16-year-old boy leave for spring break, and they're telling me he's not coming back. And what just happened? It was tragedy. And so, but I think the ability to understand that we don't have control of whatever God's will is, and understand that we have to live with intentional and make the best out of our days. And understand that the underlying thing is that I don't even fear anything at this point because I know whenever it is my time, it is my time. And I'm going to build things that live beyond my time. And so I'm maximizing my time to where I want to say I pushed everything I could out of life and exceeded everything I could ever imagine. And hopefully we have the impact that instills the minds of people wanting to do the work, the people that want to create change, that want to say, hey, I saw what he was doing from where he came from, and I see that in myself. And that makes me fearless to say, hey, I'm instilling a hopeful spirit in others. And that's the only thing that I can say about that. But plugs, Instagram, social media, Instagram and Twitter, Smart Trouble. I took my Smart Foundation. I mixed it with my best friend that's passed away, Trouble. And as a social justice advocate, you know, they talk about good trouble with John Lewis. So it's a good trouble 2.0 is how we strategize to create change. So it's smart trouble. We're thinking. It's a thinking man's game. So we're always thinking and try to process better and to be better thinkers. A safe space to read. I'm learning so much with reading more and being open to learn and being and willing to learn more about life. I think that you become stagnant in life when you think you know everything. When you lose the student mentality and the ability to grow, you hurt yourself and hinder yourself so much. And I think that if you educate the hood, you can change the world. So it's about education, it's about learning, it's about processing. But and the biggest thing about education, once you do become that educated voice, is to understand that people aren't where you are currently. To give them that space as well to where you were. So I have to revert back to who I was at 25 and 26 and 27 before I started this journey to understand that you might not be receptive because I probably would have whooped my own ass back then. I wouldn't have been, you know, as receptive to where I am now.
Amen. And then a safe space. Talk to us about how people in the Atlanta area can get to you.
Well, first of all, Kim, thank you. You know, as I told you, my best friend Steph is a Harlem girl, Harlem world. So, you know, I always got love for Harlem. Always got love for Harlem. And I love your spirit. I love first of all, shout out to you for the work that you're doing, understanding that Black boys need this. They need it so much. And even just Black people, but Black boys and Black men, because a lot of times what did Frederick Douglass quote? It's easier to build a strong boy than to repair a broken man, right? Build our boys with resilience and love. You can visit me like on IG. I'm at h.scott.gordon. On the IG and Facebook. On IG also, it's at a safe space book club. That's where we have the safe space to read. My website is www.asafespacetobe.com. So you can hit me on any forums on that. I just want to thank Kimberly and the mothers of Black boys for listening to our story, because we're not special. We're not special. There's a lot of people doing this work in this community. But if we are not told that, if this is not made available, then it goes for naught. So thank you, sister, so much for believing me, Alaguma, you know, for putting us together. That's my grant writer. So if y'all need a grant writer, y'all, Alaguma Young, she is the bomb, but she forged this union together. So my sister, you know, praise, and, you know, if you need it, reach out, because one of the things, the mission of a safe space is to do two things. One is to eradicate the stigma of mental health in the African-American community, but also I'm allow you to fall in love with yourself again, because when you love yourself, everything else is easy. Thanks,
Amen. Amen. I'm going to be in Atlanta in June. Lunch
okay.
on
Lunch on us. Lunch on us.
Definitely.
No doubt.
Visit www.mobunited.org for more information about how to access mental health resources, how to just be able to find something and someone to hear you. You can also email me directly at specialneeds@mobunited.org. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you guys for your transparency, for your truth, for your sharing, and for allowing us an opportunity to just see a small picture into the work that you're doing. And I'm serious about part 2. I'm looking forward to it. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Men, thank you for being who you are, and thank you for being examples for your community. I'm gonna forgive you for being from the Bronx.
Thank you.
Big mom.
Happy Mother's Day, mothers. My wife,
Happy
Angel.
Mother's Day.
All right, you
Shereen,
guys
my
have a
ex-wife,
good one.
Lisa. Happy Mother's
You do
Day.
the same.
Take care.